as I turned the video off, it started giving me directions again. So frustrating, you know? I swear to God, they have to make everything so hard. I mean, this is 2023. It's a smartphone. You would think it would be able to give me directions and let me do a video at the same time. Sorry. Obviously, I'm not in the best mood right now. I can't stand technology. You know, I feel so far behind. And just, it seems like something as simple as that. I don't know if I'm going the right way. Like, I want to continue on with my story, but I feel like I'm just going to have to start over. You know? So I guess just enjoy the countryside for now until I... Cool. See how pretty it is? I actually like this side of the river. This is Columbia, Illinois. It's right across from St. Louis, obviously. Which is where, you know, we just were. The JB Bridge is over there now in the distance. I feel like I'm going the right way, but who knows? I'm just waiting for something to pop up and say. I mean, there was a sign for Columbia, so we're on the right track. But like I said, I'm afraid to start my story again, because as soon as I do, I'm gonna have to start over again. I've been here once before. At least we have a good starting point, you know. You know, there's a guy named Chris. You know that he had a family. You know that he worked for Joyce Meyer. And I think I was able to add in that he was getting death threats because he was working for Joyce Meyer. And because of the death threats, he asked his neighbor to put a video camera out. This was back in, like I said, like 2008, 2009. So the technology wasn't as, you know, good as it is today. But the neighbor was a cop, so he did have, you know, surveillance, you know. And once you hear the rest of the story, it's gonna seem pretty crazy that he asked his, you know, his friend to help him, or his neighbor to help him. They wanted to try to catch this person who was leaving the notes in the mailbox. And I mean, these notes were saying horrible things, you know. If you don't stop working for Joyce now, I will, you know, come to your house and kill all of your family in their sleep. Now, you know what? I just passed. This is just on memory alone that I know that I just passed this. I swear. So now I gotta do a U-turn. Sit here and wait while I do a U-turn. Yeah, this is not going well. guess I should have just started. Ooh, is that a hiking trail? Like I said, I'm always looking for hiking trails. If anyone lives in St. Louis or, you know, Southern Illinois, let me know if you know of any good hiking trails, because I'm always looking for new ones. Okay, wait, now it is giving me. Okay, it's saying, I don't know why it wasn't giving me before. 0.5 miles, Columbia Lakes Drive, I think is what it said. Nice little. Okay, I'm on Columbia Lakes Drive. Guess I just keep going straight until I hear different. This is probably the most boring video or set of videos that you guys have ever seen. Sorry about that. I don't know how people to manage to like do all the, you know, like point the camera towards them and like insert like I said, like pictures, but also like, you know, words and stuff like that. I have no idea. Waiting for it to say something. It's not saying anything. I will say that this is getting more and more and more familiar looking. There's like a really pretty lake behind the house where it happened. Okay, now this is Robert Drive. This is where it went down. And it's not telling me, as you can see, to turn here. Oh my God. But this is Robert Drive. This is where I'm supposed to be. I know that much. Please don't tell me I'm gonna have to turn this off and turn it back on again. Oh, look at that's cute. It's got like two little skeletons. And like a guy coming out of the ground. I don't know if you can see that. Sometimes I like just going around and like taking pictures. Look at the guy up there on the porch just chilling. I don't know if you can see him. Like a scarecrow or something. I wish I had like the effort or the motivation to. There's the lake, that's what I was talking about. Okay, now we're getting close to the house. When I get close to the house, or when I get to the house, I just want to park kind of nonchalantly, you know, because I know that they're gonna, you know, drive me away. I think this is it, you guys. From the pictures, which I can't show you because I don't know how to do that, this looks like the house. So, even though it's not telling me on here, I'm just going to turn around. Let's see, this is Robert Drive. That says Micah's Way. I'm pretty sure this is it. Like, I'd almost bet anything that this is it. So now I can relax a little bit. I'm tempted to like look at my thing, but I'm not gonna do that because it's just gonna, you know, cut me off again. Ugh. Okay, so where I left off, this man, Chris, he sorry, I had to take a drink. If you guys haven't fallen asleep and you're still with me, more power to you. I'm sure the people in this neighborhood are very protective, you know, because of what went down. But, now see, can I reference my notes without it turning me off? Let's see. Okay, well, it didn't cut me off, but I wasn't really able to see the exact date, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it. In May of 2009, I believe it was this neighbor over here who was the police officer, who was the friend of Chris Chambers and his family. And he called him from Gold's Gym, which is where I started. Chris did, saying there's something not right, you know. I called the girls, or I called my wife, and she's, you know, not answering, or that's not like her. Could you go and check? He went and checked, and unfortunately, he found all 3 of them dead. He was able to get in the house, and they were all, it was death by strangulation. But even more than that, there was spray paint all over the house. They were all in their beds. Sherry, the wife, had put up a big fight. And it was obviously an ugly, horrifying scene. The spray paint mirrored what the letters had said. The letters, the threats that he had been getting at that mailbox right there, that said, you know, if you don't stop working for Joyce, I'm gonna kill your family. And it just went on and on and on and on. And, you know, it kept getting, the letters kept getting worse and worse. But, you know, the funny thing is that the police officers, all they really saw was him playing with his kids, you know, and Sherry out, you know, like, they never saw any, you know, sketchy people leaving stuff in the mailbox, you know. So on the morning, he came home just as the same time as like the ambulance and the police were showing up, and you know, he didn't even ask really anything, Kristen. He, you know, he just went down and sat by the curb and just like put his head between his legs and like shook his head, you know, like he already knew. You know, he didn't say, he didn't try to break through them, you know what I mean? He didn't try to get, you know, into the house. He didn't cry out in pain, nothing like that. He didn't even ask if they were dead or how they died or what, you know, anything like that. He just, you know, kind of went over and sat down and shook his head, and maybe a few crocodile tears, but that's it. Anyway, after that, he got him in an ambulance, and while the police, put him in the ambulance, I'm not sure why they put him in an ambulance, but I guess for shock, But at the same time as they were doing that, the police, cordoned off the crime scene and read all these big, all these, big phrases written out in red spray paint. One of them said, now you've paid for what you've done. And the other one said, like, we told you we'd F you up, and just stuff like that, We warned you, mother effer, stuff like that. And it just seems weird to me that if he was the target, why did they wait till he left? I don't know, one of those weird things, right? So anyway, now he's, on the way to the hospital, and one of the EMTs looks at his hands and realizes that his hands have bruises and cuts on them. And he asked Chris about it. And Chris got a little angry. He said, didn't you see me punch, the inside of the ambulance? I just did it, a couple seconds ago. Because I'm so upset. I punched it really hard, And, the EMT said, I didn't see you do that, And they took him to the police station, and he could already tell the walls were closing in, And the interrogation started off pretty lightly, because remember, he's friends with the police department, so they had to kind of go easy on him anyway, in the beginning. They just wanted the truth from him. And they're not stupid. I'm sure that they've kind of figured this out. If anything, I think the neighbor didn't want to believe that Chris was capable of something like this, but, reality is reality. And what happened was, he was nice at first and calm and all that, and, and then things took a turn. The policeman asked him one very important question, which was your wife, and this was like the $1 million question as far as this case goes. It was the turning point, the smoking gun, if you will. He asked him just a really simple question. Was your wife dead when you left the house this morning? And of course, he said, no. No, she wasn't dead. And that kind of sealed his fate in the, police officer's eyes. Because the problem is, he wasn't gone that long. He was gone for a couple hours. But by the time the police officers had gotten to the house and met Chris there, the bodies were cold and they were already into rigor mortis. So they had been dead for a while, Their guess was overnight, actually, And he probably did it and panicked and, did the whole spray painting bullshit, which was obvious that he did it. No one else did. And, you know, was probably pacing around figuring out what to do, which was a bad idea because that took up time that he didn't have, because, you know, as people know, once a body dies, it starts going into rigor mortis, or it starts, you know, decomposing pretty quickly, you know, and that's what happened, and that's how they knew, you know. Not to mention, I mean, this is one of the dumbest criminals of all time, okay? He took he took a note out of Scott Peterson's handbook, out of, you know, and Scott Peterson, I'm going to say this right now, and this is really controversial, but, you know, back in the day, everyone thought he did it. Everyone knew he did it. It was like kind of like an OJ thing. And I was living out there at the time. I was living in California, you know. At first, I didn't want to believe it, you know. She was pregnant. They were young. And I'm not going to get into all that. But a neighbor had said that, with Scott Peterson, that there was a crime in the neighborhood, and, you know, there were a chain of robberies and a chain of assaults and stuff like that. And so, I don't know, like, there are some crimes that I'm 100% sure about, and I was 100% sure with the Scott Peterson thing, as was everybody else. But, you know, over time, you know, hindsight is 20/20, and they've come up with not necessarily new evidence, but I don't know. He told his story from jail, and I don't know. You know what I mean? I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but with certain people, like Casey Anthony and, you know, Chris Watts, you know. This guy was Chris Watts before Chris Watts was Chris Watts, okay? And there's another guy named Christian Longo. They call them family annihilators, and it's usually always the man, you know. Everyone is familiar with the Chris Watts and Shanann Watts thing, you know. And I have my own theories about that too. Not necessarily theories like someone else did it or whatever, but I'll have to save that for another day, you know. I think that could have been handled better by all parties involved, and I think he snapped, and there's no justification for what he did, and I'm gonna leave it at that. I'll talk about that another day. But with Chris, he was the dumbest of the dumb. And the reason I say that is, you know, this happened back in 2008, but, I mean, this didn't happen back in 1998. It was 2008. It was 10 years later, you know, and surely he would know, you know, that if, you know, he did something with his computer, you know what I mean, that they would find out about it, right? Or they would want to look into it, right? If his whole family got annihilated, that they would want to look at his computer. And the computer was a treasure trove of evidence, you know. He might as well have signed his death certificate with that computer. He might as well just have given it to him and said, here, you know, I'm just, you know, give me the death penalty right now. And the reason I say that is because, I mean, there's just so many things. First of all, right off the bat, they saw videos of him recent in Maui with a girl named Tara. Now, this girl, Tara, there's always another girl, isn't it? Like I said, it's like these guys all take cues from each other, I guess. I mean, Chris Watts had another woman. Scott Peterson had another woman. They all have another woman, right? This was even, you know, scuzzier because this other woman, you know, happened to be best friends with Sherry, who is Chris's wife, back from when they were in high school together in Florida. So that just adds another layer of cringe and ick to the situation, you know. It's like, not only are these people, you know, do they know each other, but, you know, this was her best friend. So it's just, yeah, it's not good. And while, you know, they had no, you know, they obviously went down and talked to her, and obviously she knew, you know what I mean? I mean, it's her friend. She knew he was married. She knew she was having an affair. You know, it was one of those things where he was like, I promise I'm going to get a divorce on this date. And it was this very specific date. I believe it was May. And because I can't reference my notes, I can't give you the exact date. But I believe it was May 6, 2009. He said, I'm going to file for divorce on May 6, 2009. Again, it might be a day or two off there because I can't refer to my notes, damn it. But yeah, that day did come. No divorce papers were filed, but he wasn't married anymore because she was dead. So on the same day he said he was going to divorce his wife, he killed her instead. He went another route. And a part of this was, you know, by the way, all the letters, I mean, if you haven't figured it out already, all the letters that came from this person who's, you know, this evil person who doesn't like God and doesn't like the woman that Chris was working for because, you know, she was evil because she was a Christian and a televangelist. This person who was threatening them didn't exist. Shocker. It all came from Chris's computer. Once again, that computer was, you know, it was just an orgy of evidence, you know, so many things on it. Oh, also, they looked through his credit cards, you know, and everything, and looked through his receipts and stuff like that, which some of it he had scanned on his computer. And one of them was, you know, I believe it was Home Depot, red spray paint. I mean, come on, you know. So as far as dumb criminals go, he pretty much wins the prize for that, you know. Also, and I've heard this before, another family annihilator, God, I'm gonna forget his name, aren't I? Oh, okay, Susanna and Josh Powell. That was the one where they lived out in, he had a creepy dad. They were Mormons, and the dad was like a creep, and he was like he was infatuated with his son Josh's wife, Susan Powell, and he wrote all these creepy letters and these had all these creepy videos. I mean, he basically stalked her, stalked his own daughter-in-law, and wrote a song for her, many songs, which is just, as far as the cringe level goes, I don't know if you can get any higher than that. So they moved down to, oh God, where did they move? I believe Utah? Anyway, that was the one where, you know, they went, in the middle of the night, they went, quote unquote, camping out in the middle of nowhere with the 2 kids, you know, and she didn't show up the next day for daycare or whatever, you know, and they immediately went out as missing, you know, missing people. And then Josh just drove up into the driveway like, what's up? Nothing's wrong. I'm here, you know, call off the dogs. Everything's fine. Only problem, Susan wasn't with them. And he just nonchalantly was like, well, she's probably at daycare. You know, she's probably at work. And they said, no, she's not. You know, and that's what started that whole thing. But that's another family annihilator. And that ended horribly for those kids. I mean, I've never heard of such a, you know, violent. It was more violent than this story here, you know, if you can imagine that. But yeah, these family annihilators, they're everywhere. They get in over their head, they don't know what to do. Wah, you know, you get married. Next thing you know, the wife's pregnant, and she's pregnant again, then she's pregnant again. And, you know, I will say this, you know, my dad always said to me that the biggest pressure of his life, even though he loved us to pieces, was, you know, that he not only had to take care of himself, but that he had, you know, 3 other mouths to feed, you know, and 3 other, you know, people to clothe, and you know, people are expensive, you know, children are expensive. And he, you know, he loved us, so it was worth it. But, you know, it's never an excuse to, you know, to kill them, you know. But sometimes these religious, you know, and I'm not saying anything bad about religion, but sometimes these religious situations, like the one I just mentioned, Josh Powell, he was a Mormon, and, you know, I believe Christian Longo, I believe he was a Christian or a Mormon too, and obviously Chris was deeply religious, working for Janet Meyer. And, you know, they did a deposition with Janet Meyer after the deaths, murders, and they straight out asked her, they said, would you have fired him if he came to you and said that he was divorcing his wife? And basically she said yes, which is like, come on, lady, you know, I mean, this is the whole reason that he did this, and you're just playing it off like, yeah, I probably would have fired him, you know, I definitely would have fired him knowing he had an affair, you know, but I probably would have fired him if he had a divorce too, you know. I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes these rules are a little too much, and they end up making, you know, people make horrible decisions based on them, you know. It's just like, man up, get a divorce, you know what I mean? If, you know, if that's your choice, you know, getting a divorce or killing your spouse and your kids, get a freaking divorce. Is it the best thing to do? Oh, that was loud. No, it isn't the best thing to do. I mean, my thing is work it out. That's why I'm not married. I mean, well, there's lots of reasons I'm not married. But, you know, no one's asked me. That's number one reason. I mean, somebody did ask me, but sort of. It was kind of like a half-assed thing. And obviously it never amounted to anything, so, which is why I spend my weekends alone, you know. You know, but people will tell me sometimes, you know, Carrie, you don't know how lucky you have it, you know, because so many people are stuck. They're stuck in, you know, with kids that they don't necessarily, and, you know, everybody loves their kids, but I mean, there's plenty of cases where, you know, women will have kids and horrible things can happen. I mean, look at what happened with Susan Smith. I don't know if anyone remembers her from the 90s, but it's like she, you know, was married. I think they were separated. She had a cute husband too, by the way. Her, you know, the husband that she had the kids with. He was cute. I don't know why she was an idiot anyway, but I don't know why she was out having an affair. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, hello, I'm sitting out here like single, like a loser, never had any kids. She's, you know, a frump, you know, she's a hag, homely, and I can say all this stuff because she was a horrible person, you know, and she's got this handsome husband at home, and what does she do? Not only does she, you know, not only does she have an affair on him, you know, but this guy, the guy that she was having an affair with, I mean, he wasn't even good looking. He was, you know, he was bald, and he, you know, had like one of those deals where it's bald, he's bald, but he has like a little bit in the back, and then like a little turf, like right up in the, like above his forehead, you know. And again, I don't mean to make fun of people's looks, but, you know, he basically told her, I mean, he was an asshole too. He basically told her, I don't want you because you have kids, and I don't want any kids. And so what was her answer to that? She drove her kids into a lake and killed them. Yeah. And something happened like that 10 years prior to that, in the 80s. The Susan Smith thing happened in 1993. In 1983, Suzanne Downs shot her 3 kids for the same reason. She was having an affair with a guy who didn't want kids. So her solution was, I'll kill them, make it look like an accident, shoot myself, and make it like a flesh wound, and then that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm good to go. They'll all die, I'll recover, and I'll get the man of my dreams. I mean, you know, it's like people are doing stuff like that, and I'm a nice person, you know, and I just cannot, you know, fathom, you know, I don't know. I can't fathom these people, you know. And I'm not stupid. Like, I know being married doesn't instantly make you happy. Like, it's a lot of work, you know. But listen, if you're attracted to the person's attracted to you, and you fall in love, and you make a life, you know what I mean? Make it work, for God's sake. You know, if it's not working, then you're doing something wrong, you know? And if you're not happy, then you're doing something wrong, or he's doing something wrong, you know? But, I mean, you don't have to be miserable in a marriage. I mean, there's a reason why you got married in the first place, I guess is what I'm saying. And maybe that sounds naive, because I've never been married. And I do know that, like, having kids, even though I've never had kids, and people always remind me of that. You don't understand because you've never had kids. Okay, great. You know? I never had an opportunity to, you know? But, yeah, I could understand how bringing kids into the mix would complicate things, you know? They're expensive. You know, you love them, but they're expensive, and they're, I don't know. It is what it is. I guess what I'm saying is they take the sexiness out of the marriage, if you know what I mean. You know, now you're, instead of the man having the woman, you know, 24/7, now he comes home to a woman and, you know, a bunch of crying, screaming babies. You know, my dad was a good dad, and he was all too happy to come home to us, but not all men are like that. Not all women are like that. And the scary thing is you don't even know until you have the kids. You know, and for most people, it's not a problem. You have them, and everything just kind of, you know, it brings the couple closer together. You know, but that doesn't always happen. So, I'm not stupid. I know it's complicated, but, you know, like, I've been in relationships where I did want out. You know, I did think to myself, I'd rather be single, you know, but it wasn't a real relationship. It was more just, you know, it definitely wasn't a marriage. You know, I would never marry someone for convenience, for security, you know, because everybody else got married and you didn't, which is my case. I mean, I know women who have done that, you know, because they don't want to be me. They don't want to be the woman on the outside who everyone thinks is pathetic, you know, or there must be something wrong with her because she's not married, doesn't have any kids, you know. So they'll just marry whoever and try to make it work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, it's hard to find people like I don't think I know anybody who, and this is sad, like, who doesn't instantly pick someone up. It's kind of like if you have a job, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to quit your job until you've found a new job, you know. And it's that way with relationships too. It's like a lot of these people are so afraid to be single and alone, you know, because all their friends are married. You know, they all go out in groups. They're all, you know, have the same thing in common. I mean, think about it. You grow up, you go out there, and you're with your peers all the way along. You know, you go to you school together, then you go to college, then you go to, you know, then I call it the Friends phase, the show Friends. I went through that phase where that was a great phase. So was college, you know. And then everyone started to, like, the show Friends, obviously is what I mean, where they're all like friends. They haven't paired off yet. But it was after that where I started to struggle, because all my friends were, I mean, in the wind. They didn't want to be friends with a single woman when they were off having kids, you know. I mean, it was just like almost overnight, you know. And it was just a very cold, depressing feeling that these people who I felt I was so close to, you know, and I was. Like, one day we were so close, and the next day they were just gone. And I don't just mean gone, like moved away, but like I would go to their weddings, and they just weren't there anymore. They were different people, and not good people, you know. A couple of them, most of them were, you know, there was kind of like a, I don't know what to call it, like they were a bit patronizing towards me after that, you know? And I just wanted to say to them, hey, I was the one who had sex first before any of you. I mean, you guys were coming to me and asking me for advice because I had like the hottest boyfriend and had sex, and you guys couldn't find a date, and I helped you find dates. So it was just like crazy to go from that. And also they would go to bars with me and clubs because they knew they could pick up a guy, you know, because there'd be like 3 or 4 guys, you know, and one of them would always, you know, usually the best looking one would always go to me. And I'm not saying that, you know, to be full of myself. This was 20 years ago, you know, but I was a cute little thing, you know. But it's just, it's such a dramatic change to go from that to where I am now. It's almost like I've regressed, you know, and it ain't fun. But it could be worse. I could be like Chris over here, you know. I could be spending the rest of my life in prison, or I could be like his poor wife and kids, you know. Now, this is the last part of my video. I know this hasn't been very good, to say the least. I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for doing this, but there's supposed to be some kind of memorial back here. Oh, and by the way, I was gonna go to the graveyard where the girls and Sherry are buried, but I can't do that because they, when they were buried, they were still, you know, Chris was still in charge, you know, and he had them buried here. Once he was convicted and sent away for life, her parents moved them all up to Chicago and buried them there. So, don't look at me, I'm just minding my business. Of course, there's a dog. It's gonna alert everyone to my presence. But isn't this beautiful here? God, I wish I lived here. This is nice. I think this bench. Oh God, now every dog in the neighborhood is joining in as a chorus. I think this is their bench. Memorializing them. I don't think it says it anymore. But I think at one time it did. But I think this is their little memorial bench. I hope I have the right house. Like, I literally, like, that would be funny if all that time I was at the wrong house. Pretty stupid, huh? But, I mean, right before I came here, like, I looked up the picture of the house. And, it looks an awful lot like this. I mean, it really, just to think what went on in there, I'm surprised they didn't tear it down, you know? Surprised. But it's beautiful. Good Lord, it's beautiful here. And this is where I'm going to conclude my video. Everybody have a good weekend. In my next video, I'm going to make sure it's a little more, a little shorter, and make sure all my research is done beforehand. And I know where to go and everything, so I don't have to cut it into 3 pieces. I hate doing that. But if anyone has any tips on how to do a good YouTube video, let me know. And Have a good weekend. Take care.